Portmeirion is one of the strangest and most distinctive places in Wales. Constructed by architect Clough Williams-Ellis in 1925 as a home for fallen buildings, the village is an Italianate bricolage of architecture and architectural styles. It is said to be based on Portofino in Italy, though Clough Williams-Ellis always strenuously denied this. The late Jan Morris said that Portmeirion was not, we are assured, designed just as a folly, but as a statement of aesthetic principle. The principle that profitable development need not clash with natural beauty. Owing to its unique design, Portmeirion has often been used for film and television. As Williams-Ellis stated, the stage very early discovered the place as an apt and congenial set. After the Second World War, the film companies began to come along increasingly, usually and tactfully, at the end of the season, when we often have a fine Indian summer lasting into October, and when we are glad to have them, as the ordinary visitors begin to thin out. The most famous production to be filmed at Portmeirion is, of course, the surreal and sometimes bizarre 1960s drama, The Prisoner. The series followed Patrick McGoohan's number 6 as he attempted to escape what Lewis and Stempel call a sort of Shangri-La from hell. Fundamentally, it is a series centered around identity and the loss of identity. It is set in a nameless place, in some unknown location, where everyone's name is replaced by a number. Everything that defines identity is stripped away from the narrative, and the series shows how number 6 rebels against this stripping, as exemplified by his mantra,
I am not a number, I am a free man!
The series became not only one of the most identifiable productions to shoot in Wales, but also one of the most influential, spawning innumerable homages and parodies right up to the present day, including a special episode of The Tube in 1987 and an episode of The Simpsons in 2000, which featured Patrick McGoohan in a guest role. The downside was that the series became so influential and so recognised that it made filming at Portmeirion difficult, if not impossible, for any film or television productions which followed. This was not an issue for Patrick McGoohan's earlier series, Danger Man, which has been suggested to have been a prequel to The Prisoner. It followed the adventures of James Bond-esque secret agent John Drake, and during its first series, it used Portmeirion on a number of occasions. Most prominently, this occurred in the first episode, The View from the Villa, where Portmeirion appears as both an Italian village and the subject of a mysterious painting. Despite the village only being used for a short portion of the 25-minute episode, shots of the village are used liberally, including one long section showing Drake driving through the village. Drake would return to Portmeirion in a later episode, Under the Lake, where the hotel at Portmeirion stood in for a Swiss base of a group of treasure hunters led superbly by Doctor Who's Roger Delgado. The area immediately surrounding the hotel, in particular the terrace, was heavily used in the episode, and through not using the same portion of the village as the earlier episode, the producers were able to suggest that this was a different place than had earlier appeared. 4 more episodes from the first series, meanwhile, used brief insert shots of Portmeirion for various locations, again without indication that, as Drake put it,
I've been here before.
Because Portmeirion became instantly recognisable after The Prisoner had aired, later productions had difficulty in using the location as effectively or as thoroughly as the earlier 2 series. Film and television production relies on illusion. As an audience, we are asked to believe that the place we see on screen is really where we are seeing. In most cases, we accept this. In An American Werewolf in London, for instance, this bleak and dark moorland is signposted as Yorkshire. With nothing to suggest to the audience that it isn't Yorkshire, it is easy for the audience to accept the illusion that it is Yorkshire, when, in actual fact, it is Wales. However, If an audience is already aware of a shooting location, or is made aware through the appearance of an identifiable feature or landmark, the illusion can be broken and disbelief cannot be suspended. Take this scene from 2011's Captain America: The First Avenger. The audience are asked to believe that this is Brooklyn in the 1940s, and there are additions to the scene which add weight to this idea. However, once we become aware that this is really Stanley Dock in Liverpool, the illusion is broken. Anybody who knows the area will, amongst other identifiers, be able to recognise the brick chimney in the background of several shots.
Hail Hydra!
Another to film in Liverpool was 2022's The Batman, starring Robert Pattinson, where Batman not only visits St George's Hall, a recognisable Liverpool landmark, but also jumps from the most recognisable building in the city, the Liver Building, ending the suspension of disbelief for anybody who is even vaguely familiar with Liverpool. This breaking of illusion happened wholesale with Portmeirion, which immediately became known as The Village, following the release of The Prisoner. It was such that 10 years later, in 1976, when the producers of Doctor Who sought a suitable Italian location for the story The Mask of Mandragora, they were well aware that their audience would recognise Portmeirion and be taken out of the story. To get around this, as well as to avoid some modern features, the film crew relied on close-ups and low angles, and made attempts to avoid showing anything that would give their audience an indication that it was shot in Portmeirion, what producer Philip Hinchcliffe called selective shooting. They also made much use of the woodland and gardens behind the village, such as in this scene where Tom Baker's stunt double sword fights with a group of Italian guardsmen. Another example comes with the last episode of comedy series Citizen Smith, broadcast on the 31st of December 1980, which used Portmeirion as Rimini in Italy. As with the view from the villa episode of Danger Man, almost 2 decades earlier, the usage was brief, starting with a shot of the characters driving through the village. As with Doctor Who, the production had to take pains not to indicate to the audience that this was filmed in Portmeirion. At the same time, Granada Studios' Brideshead Revisited, when filming a short scene at Portmeirion, also used low angles and avoided showing identifiable features. Mostly, they used the swimming pool. Lastly, on film, the Liam Neeson crime thriller Under Suspicion kept its action to the area around the hotel, and even then still set most of the scenes at night in the dark. Though Portmeirion was well known and admired before the airing of The Prisoner, and had even been used in film and television prior to it, it was The Prisoner which cemented the village's reputation as a filming location, especially in the minds of the public. However, the location became so well known and so associated with The Prisoner that it became difficult, if not impossible, for other productions to use the village. Thanks to the curse of The Prisoner, it will likely never be used in the same way again.